Hello, everyone, and good evening, and welcome to another author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and Wandering Scribe. And joining us today is a first timer here on the show. Now, my guest is a U.S. Navy veteran, engineer, and islander from Puerto Rico, fellow Boricua in the house. He lives in Florida with his wife, two sons, a dog, and a fierce cat. On any chance he gets, he escapes this world by immersing in the world of fantastic realms with his many books that spark the inspiration to tell wondrous stories with the beginning of a new epic trilogy. Occasionally, he enjoys going freshwater fishing, recording epic inspired tunes in his home studio, and spending quality time with his family. So, without further ado, let's give a huge round of applause to today's guest, author, veteran, and fellow Islander, Fernando J. Sanchez. Fernando, welcome to the show.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Nice to be here.
Awesome, Fernando. We are so excited to have you on the show. So, before we dive into your book, is there anything else you'd like to share with our viewers and listeners?
Sadly, the cat passed away, so we don't have the fiercest
Oh,
cat in the world. But we're checking the shelters to see if we find a new family member. So we'll see, just to make the kids happy.
well, I hope you guys do find a wonderful cat. And
Black
from
cat,
what you just said in like the little intro, sounded like that. Was this a boy or a girl?
girl.
She sounded like a very fierce companion.
Yeah, she was real
Awesome.
fire. Yeah.
That's lovely. That is lovely, Fernando. So, for this interview, would you like to show our viewers what book we will be talking about in this interview?
All right. This is book one. It's called The Rise of the Unbroken. The trilogy is called the Dark Ascendant trilogy. The book one was published a year and a half ago, almost 2 years. Already working on book two. But yeah, this is my first book, and it's been an incredible experience to get there. Um, yeah, super excited to continue and finish this story. It's gonna be
Awesome.
great.
That's great to hear, Fernando. Now, as a little teaser, to not give too many spoilers, what can you tell our viewers and listeners about this series that you are working on?
Well, this trilogy, the story based on a dream I had during the long time ago during the Iraqi War in 2003,
Mm,
and I the dream was so incredible that I decided that it have to be shared, the story, the essence, and the message that it was involved in I saw the dream like in a movie, so I determined like, oh my goodness, this have to be shared, and the best way to share is through telling a story, just like it's been happening since thousands of years, right? You tell a story, and there's always a message, and there's always something to learn from, and that's how it started. And I've always been a fantasy reader, movies. My dad used to love the old movies like Conan and
mm,
Beastmaster, Sauron the Sorcerer, all that stuff. And then during the military service, during deployments of those long nights,
mm.
the best companions was the fantasy books, just to take you away, give you a space in which you can live with yourself. And it was the story, the story had turned into a fantasy. It has is being driven by the essence of the dream. So it's been a long, it's been almost 20 some years cooking, right? Because I have to learn, I have to read more, and the more I read, taking courses, all that good stuff, just to get started. And it was like probably like 5 years to publish the first book, because
Wow.
it is, at least for me, it is something new, obviously. So you have to keep learning, and never stop learning. You cannot stop. So
Absolutely, 100%. And you're probably the second guest that's been on the show that have said that, their book was inspired by in part from a dream, which I find
awesome.
very, very fascinating. I forgot who it was. I'll have to go back into the episode. But yeah, you are the second guest that has mentioned that a dream was the inspiration for the book, which I
Mm,
absolutely love
that's
hearing that.
amazing. That's amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. So before we continue to explore, the origins of this series, let's talk a little bit about you, Fernando, a little bit. Let's start at the beginning. So as you mentioned before, that you were a big fantasy reader, still a big fantasy reader now, and your dad inspired you, or rather, I should say, got you hooked on the fantasy genre from the old fantasy films like Conan the Barbarian,
Yeah.
Beastmasters, and
Mm.
many more cult fantasy movies. But what about the writing aspect? How did that come about? Were you always writing something down in a journal growing up, or did that come later in life?
It came later. Well, I used to, believe it or not, I was taught to, if I have dreams, that was in the family, right? If I have dreams that were impactful, to write them down
Mm,
for some reason or the other. It was like a practice for writing. Basically, it was my one of my aunts. She was a teacher, and I think that was the purpose of writing those. And she would read and she would correct them. But then after the Navy, I joined a band, and I was
mm,
the one that writing the lyrics. So the lyrics were before the Navy. I was in another band. I was writing the lyrics too, and the lyrics were complete stories, one song to the other. It was like a continuation, a whole story going on. And then I put it. Now I put it like for real, like writing a novel, writing a book. So it's been a transition, like super slow pace, but steady, at least.
absolutely. And that's the thing about, the writing process, is that it does take time to really
Yes.
understand if this is something you want to pursue and build a brand and career off of it, or do you just want to have it stay as just a little hobby on the side to, to share with family and friends. So going off of that, what would you consider your aha moment, the moment you realized that you wanted to take this story that's been with you from this dream and develop it not just into a story, but into a series, a trilogy?
I guess as the dream progressed and the story, I started writing like the outline of how the main events of what I can remember right from the dream. Uh, I noticed that there have to be a middle, beginning, a middle, and an end. So that's why I decided I'm a first time writer, but then I decided to write a trilogy, which is like, oh my goodness, let's climb the mountain, but the highest mountain, let's make it harder now, yeah. So that's how it went, and it's like, okay, I have to cut it. I have to cut the story in three parts. That way, the progression and everything that I want to demonstrate and show and share can be appreciated.
Absolutely, 100%. And I find that very, very beautiful, Fernando.
Thank you.
So now let's actually talk about the development of the first book in the trilogy. So walk me through it. So you've had this dream, you're now writing it down, and you're now formatting it in an outline.
Right.
So at that stage, what were the goals you had going into the story as the author, but also the goals and promises you were making, not just to yourself, but also to your future readers?
So because this story is takes place between angels and demons, right? But there is in a fantasy setting. It's not like the angels and demons that we, as a Christians or whatever, people know in the
Mhm.
real world, right? So I created a fantasy universe, a fantasy world where the demons live in their own world and the angels, whatever, right? They have their own thing. But when I really started, that I sat down to write something about it, it was basically the mythology before I write the story. So
Mm.
I began for the creation, how they were created, and how the angels got separated from the good ones and the bad ones, and what happens to the humans. So I created some kind of like a 3 page or 4 page mythology story, like the alpha of the whole thing. Then from there, I extracted sections, like, okay, so now I know which way I'm heading, because I had the basically the foundation, the mythology of the I had created the names of the most powerful beings, and then how the main events that cause angels to be angels and demons to become demons. It's not the same. It's a fantasy setting, obviously. So
Mm.
yeah, I began with a mythology basically. Then I started slowly writing then the story.
Okay, I'm just gonna make a little tangent really quick because as soon as you said angels and demons, and something just went into my head, it's like, okay, is this like a common theme now? And the reason I bring this up, Fernando, is that you're probably now the well, myself, another guest, another Puerto Rican author, and you are probably writing the exact same type of story. You, I believe Francisco, and myself, we've both written fantasy books on angels and demons. And
My
I'm just
goodness,
having
are you
a
serious? That's
I'm
awesome.
not even joking.
All
That
right,
is like
we
so
have to
wild.
create our own society now.
we might
That's
we might
amazing.
that is it's just so crazy how we have written on a similar idea but given it its own identity. Sorry
Right.
viewers and listeners, I had to do that because that's just really that was a little like whoa moment. But
That's
getting back
awesome.
on getting back on hand, so after you develop the mythology for your world and then writing the story, which almost kind of reminds me a little bit of Tolkien kind of created the world of Middle Earth before he began writing it. So after that point and now drafting it,
Hmm.
what about family and friends when they learned about it? What was their reaction like?
Oh, I've been telling, I've been wanting to begin writing the story as a proper novel for years. I mean, the dream was in 2000, I'm sorry, 2003. And I told my dad, and then my wife. She's been like, I mean, it came to a point like, okay, I think I'm ready, and it's been already 18 years later, and she's like, all right, so let's get it. And she started looking for courses and stuff like that that I can take.
Mm.
English is my second language, obviously. I have a heavy accent, but doesn't represent on the writing. I can write better than I can, that I can speak, right? Um, but yeah, everybody was uh, ready for me to get started. I'm like, just be done with it, please. Just tell your story. You keep saying it for years, so it's time, and the time was here now.
Awesome. Now, I
Yeah.
know you said in the beginning that the first book was published not too long ago, and you're working on the second one. So, when you
Yes.
began developing the first one, before you went about, getting an editor and publishing it, did you do any beta readers and ARC readers? And if so, what was their reaction like? What was their feedback? Positive, heavily critical, or somewhere down the middle?
I did two better readers on the first version of the novel, the whole
Mm.
novel, and they were too positive. Like they were like, this is amazing. I'm like, no, I need you to find I need you to find plot holes. I need you to find hits, whatever you can find that is wrong. Please tell me. So then I prepared the best script I could and went to a developmental editor, and
Mm.
she threw the hammer down. She's like, this is how this is how you have to work on here X and Y and Z, and work on it. I didn't work on it. I did, and then when I sent it back, she came out like, "Oh my goodness, this is good, good job." You know, she was really happy. But the beginning, it was like the whole manuscript. It was like with a highlighter, red, yellow. You know, like, oh my goodness. But that's how you learn. I mean, that's why you hire that type of professional, right? So give you guidance, give you pointers, and then give you some teaching moments in which obviously you need them every day and in every aspect. But in this case, that's how it went. So it was like not hitting a brick wall. It was like um, it was kind of harsh, but I wanted to be harsh
Mm.
feedback. That way I can make it better. I needed to make it better.
Absolutely. And once the first book was published, did you feel that your promise to your readers was validated from the reviews that you got?
I feel I did. I feel I did, and a lot of feedback was the world building. It was like they really loved it. That they felt like they were like right there, like, oh my goodness, I can like breathe the toxics of the smoke or whatever. They love the world building, that they love the intricacy of this character. It was a really good feedback, and I'm blown away by it. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. This is amazing. It's a great feeling, when you the idea that you want to share is being understood. I like that.
That's incredible. That's really, really incredible, Fernando. And that kind of leads into a really powerful reflective question. Well, one of many, which I would like to hear your thoughts on, which is, as first time authors, when we start off in this journey, a part of ourselves is imprinted on our books. It's, a way to show that this is our project, this is our baby, that this is something that we've been working a long time. And in
Right.
today's climate for the publishing industry, it's vastly different than it was 20 years ago.
Right.
And with the rise of social media, it's a double edged sword. Yes, on one hand, we are able to meet new people, new readers, connect with fellow authors, and network. On the other side of the coin, we do allow ourselves, unfortunately, to be exposed and become targets for hate speech trolls, very, very negative reviews. And by negative reviews, viewers and listeners, I mean reviews with the sole intent of being cruel
Right.
without, offering some kind of feedback. Because there you can have very critical reviews that are like maybe like 3-star, but they still say there's some things to be improved upon. And then there are those 1-star reviews that just say, either it's bad or something in one sentence, or it's a whole page and a half that's just like a whole rant. And that could be very deflating for an author's self-esteem and
Anybody,
confidence.
yes, definitely.
And that also leads into imposter syndrome in the back of every creator's mind, just ready to just pounce when the need arises. So, Fernando, I am curious, with this book, developing it over such a long period of time, and now finally having not just the first book in the series, but also developing the next one. Have you ever had those moments of imposter syndrome and high anxiety? And if so, or if not, what disciplined you to continue with the series? Because it's one thing to write a book, have it out there, and build upon that. It's another thing entirely to say, you know what? I love this world so much. I love what I've created. I want to expand on this and develop book 2, book 3, and possibly a few spin-offs.
Well, the story calls for continuation, and complete. I read my goal is to write the entire story, so I broke it down to 3 books as a trilogy, and I feel obligated and compelled to finish the story no matter what. I have to share it. Some people, they might like it, they might not like it. I mean, luckily, not yet. I haven't got any repercussions, like you say, like those type of keyboard soldiers, keyboard warriors
Mhm.
that they want to write necessary things. But no matter what, I'm gonna keep moving forward. One thing that I read is like a comment, or like a somebody said, almost every story has been told already, but not by you.
Absolutely.
So I'm doing my version of the dream, and I'm writing the best way I can to project the message and the story. That way, through the story, the message will be slithering all the way. And hopefully by the end, you're like, oh my goodness, if he can do it, I'm going to do it too, you know?
Absolutely. 100%.
But I
And
really, I really, trying to focus on that. Like, this is my story. This is my version. I really wanted to share it. I'm moving forward with it. Yep.
absolutely, Fernando, and I couldn't agree more. And that leads into another fun discussion, which I've been sharing this a lot with my guests. It's something new, and I like to hear their thoughts on it. So, a while ago, a previous guest of mine, shout out to Jasmine Young for this, she posted on her feed that, during the 4 years in lockdown quarantine, it was sort of like a rebirth or a birth, depending on one's own interpretation or opinion, of creators, whether that's artists, musicians, and of course, authors, whether you're traditional,
Hmm.
hybrid, or indie. And it was such an influx of people, I was blown away. And really thinking on it, I realized I was also part of the golden age, because I began writing around, like, the height of the lockdown, around the quarantine, and I wrote my books and I was still in graduate school. And now, after being out of school for about few years, 2022, and it's now 2025, I have already, almost 4 books published. I have all 3 that I've
Nice.
written in, thank you, all 3 that I wrote during graduate school. And my 4th book that I wrote during graduate school will be coming out sometime this year. Don't know when, but it'll be coming out. So going back to this topic, Fernando, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think, in your opinion, that in those 4 years, a golden age did emerge for creators?
Absolutely. That was when I hit my peak on writing. I was moving like a freight train without brakes during the lockdown. There was, I mean, I am naturally and a very introvert person, according to my wife. According, that test that you take that test. Yeah, I'm like omega introvert, way out there. So being locked down, it was like, whew, all right, I'm in the zone right now. And during that long year, uh, it was nonstop. It was like really like without breaks. I was writing, I was going for it. It was, yeah, I definitely agree. And music wise too, I have friends that are musicians, and they wrote albums during the lockdown, like whole albums, like it's heavy metal, whatever. But they play all the instruments. They have enough time to play all the instruments, but they still record it. You know what I'm saying? So that kind of lockdown was an artistic gateway that opened, and everybody's like, I'm going for it. This is amazing. For some reason, I mean, in a bad situation, they made the best of what was happening outside.
Absolutely, 100%. And a lot of people, all these creators have the opportunity to not only share their projects, but also build their brands.
Yeah.
I, of course, am a little late to the party on that, but still, I'm now realizing that, as a creator and as an author, I realize how important it is to build one's brand, to really get one's name out there, especially in the digital age, to really
Yes.
market to your audience, which now leads into the business portion of the interview, the business side of being an author. So let's talk about that aspect, Fernando. And as a little
Mhm.
icebreaker, when you decided to publish your first book in your trilogy, which publishing route did you go with that you believed was the best for this book? Indie, hybrid, or traditional?
I went self-publish. So I went through KDP with Amazon.
Hmm.
Um, After doing research, um, the in the fantasy, I mean, I was reading it. It could vary, right? But the amount of words in a book, like 100K or 90K, more than 150. Some publishing houses are like no. Uh, then I'm a first time author also, so it's like a So I decided just to venture myself, push myself, and just go self publish, and that way I can taste the waters, like let's go head first, head first, and that's the route I chose, and I kind of understand that because it's gonna be a trilogy, it's gonna be quite difficult. I really don't. I'm not sure, but it could be difficult for any publishing house. Like say, okay, I'm going to publish book 2 of your trilogy. Then they will have to publish book 1 also. So that creates. I really don't know how that goes. It's kind of all this is kind of new to
Hmm.
me, obviously. But once I'm done with this trilogy, then I already have stories in mind. I already have some outlines set up. There's gonna be standalones. Another fact, they're gonna be still fantasy. So once I get there, and maybe I will push for a agent or publishing house to see what happens.
Absolutely, 100%. You actually brought up something that a previous guest of mine mentioned before when it comes to, publishing is unlike in independent publishing, where we ourselves can decide, how many books we want to publish. For
Right.
traditional publishing, it's just the blurb. You just send in the blurb. Even if you have the story already written, if they read the blurb and they don't take it, then that's pretty much it. Doesn't matter if you already have like the series already written and you're just saying, okay, I have the series written out and I would like to do at least. Nope. If the blurb's not accepted by that house, you have to do the whole curing all over again. And it can be a little frustrating. That's why
No, okay.
there are so many avenues for
Hmm.
authors too, not just big traditional publishing, but indie traditional publishing, where it's like the small independent houses in your
Right.
local area that have already established their presence and have good connections. I've known several authors who have gone that direction, and not a lot of recognition is given to these small houses because we think, oh, they're not like HarperCollins, Macmillan's, Penguin Random House,
Penguin. Yeah.
Tor,
Hmm.
Forge, yep, all these others. Not to give any shade to those publishers, no, but to highlight that there's more publishing options beyond the big titans on the East Coast. And
Got
then
it. Yeah.
from that, of course, we also have to go into the marketing aspect, which I think a lot of authors struggle, myself included, when it comes to marketing for our
Yes.
readers and understanding our audience. So let's talk about that aspect, the readership and audience. So, Fernando, when you began writing the first book in your trilogy, did you have a good idea of your audience and who they were? Because, for us, we are the target audience first and foremost, but when we share it, we really have to consider, okay, what genre does this belong to? What subgenre could this also fit in? And will
Hmm.
these readers be open minded to this new story?
All that stuff, I definitely researched everything since I mean back probably 5 or 6 years ago when I was getting started with this book one. Definitely. So I decided it's gonna be a fantasy story. It's gonna be my own version of the fantasy story, but then, like you said, subgenres that goes into dark epic fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
and then it goes when you mention angels and demons. Some people in the fantasy audience, it might not be a hook for them. Some others they say, "Oh, wow, that sounds fantastic. Let's see what's happening here." So it's I just went for it. I just went for it. But definitely, I did some research on that aspect, trying to find where I'm gonna try to find the people to read it. And I've been surprised. I went in January. I went to a book festival here in Jacksonville, and the people that were really interested with the book and the poster and everything, they were not the people that you expected. That I don't know. So it's like some 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 people they can say I love fantasy books, but then they won't read it. And some people that they don't read fantasy, they're like, oh my gosh, I want to read this book. So you never know. Basically, you never know. You want to target some kind of area, some audience to see how that goes. And sometimes it's unexpected. The people that they give you the feedback are like, "Oh wow, you read it? Wow, thank you so much." So I like that kind of surprises though from people that you don't
Absolutely.
expect. Yeah.
100%. And that kind of leads into another little discussion before I get into the readership, which is more of like an opinion question. So, Fernando, in your opinion, when should an author consider their audience? During the drafting phase of the writing or the marketing phase of the book?
Um. Now for what I learned so far, I think the earlier that you can engage your audience, the better. So
Mm.
you're in the drafting, and like for example, I after the book was publishing everything, I found an artist that she did the artwork from some of the characters, and that based on the description of the book, and they came out amazing. So maybe if I would have started with that kind of art already on hand before I publish, I can start intriguing people. Okay, this is the characters. Would you like to know more? This is, I mean, giving some hints and tips or whatever, so that people can like, oh, okay, let me see what's going on here. Let me follow this guy, and see when he puts the book out. I'm ready to jump in. So what I learned so far is that earlier you can engage the audience or you can talk to people, the better. The earlier. Don't wait until too late.
Absolutely. Now let's talk on the readership. And I know readership is probably the most challenging when it comes to the marketing phase because, yes, you can market to your target audience, which I think that's what everyone would tell you. But the readership is probably the most difficult, especially if you look at the four categories, which is middle grade, YA, NA, and AM. Now, for those who don't know these terms, I'll make it very brief. Middle grade is generally geared towards children. That means it can't have any adult themes whatsoever. YA is young adult, where you can get away with certain themes. NA is new adult. It is transitional. So it's from preteen to teenager to possibly, adult fiction, but still has its own set of rules. And of course, AF is adult fiction. It's general fiction. That is where you can get away with a lot of themes, with a lot of specific language that your reader is going to understand. And I
Hmm.
think as authors, we really don't consider that aspect of the writing process, if it's YA, NA, or AF, or middle grade, because we just write the story. So for you, Fernando, where would you categorize this trilogy? And has it been a challenge to write for that particular readership?
Yes. I would say young adult and adults. I thought about it throughout the process of writing. Um, I spent almost a decade in the Navy, and the phrase say "curse like a sailor," right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's no curse words in my novels, even though it's in a setting of creatures that they're supposed to be evil 100% of the time because they're demons, right? So you expect them to say whatever they have to say, whatever they want to say, but um, I just felt that I wouldn't be sending the message that I want to send if I went all gun ho, go all out. I want to keep a little bit of control, and but still the action that takes place and some of the events, they're like pretty strong for you for a reader. Like, ooh, wow, my goodness. But I would say young adult and adult definitely. But I did my research just for that, and throughout the whole process, I kept in mind that that's what I wanted. I wanted to project of send put out the book for that kind of people, that kind of audience in that level, that age group.
Absolutely. And I think that's also calls back to, the authors, their individuality and their integrity of how they want to, write their story. And we're going to touch a little bit on, the struggles of keeping an author's identity in the sense that we want to showcase, who we are. But there was something I did want to touch with you, which I've noticed a new trend happening, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. So, like you said earlier, your book deals with, angels and demons, with the creation, and ultimately their war. And I've noticed this trend where there's a new kind of subgenre emerging, which is religious fantasy. And for those who don't know what that is, viewers and listeners, from what I've been able to research, religious fantasy is where it is a fantasy world, but it draws a lot on religion, real world religion, whether it's themes, topics, doctrines, and so forth. And I know that can be a turnoff to some readers because they do not want to be preached
Hmm.
and may not get the metaphors or the meanings of religious fantasy. And for my book in particular, I've noticed this, Michael, Last Angel of Earth, where it is religious fantasy, but it's not preaching in the sense trying to shove something down, but the metaphors
Right.
and messages are able to be understood by everyone, even if you are a religious person or not. So,
Hmm.
Fernando, I would like to hear your thoughts on this discussion that's kind of emerging in the publishing community.
Now that you mentioned religious fantasy, I also saw another term called spiritual warfare,
Ooh,
which is
okay.
our books that deal that are written in that kind of in a kind of atmosphere or ambience in between angels and demons and stuff like that, and holy man against demons, etc., etc.
Right.
This my book is I recreated the creation, recreated the mythology of how the rebellion started, recreated how the souls are judged in the
Mm-hmm.
afterlife. I created the whole process, and to make it fantastic, a total fantasy, and it's a total fantasy uh, setting. But definitely that one that you mentioned, what was it called?
Um, the
The
religious fantasy.
religious fantasy. Um, hmm. I'm think I shouldn't be categorizing inside that one, but it could. I don't know. Maybe somebody has a good point after they read the book, like, oh, maybe you. But that's the first time I hear it though. That's
Yeah.
interesting. I'm gonna look more into it. That's pretty interesting. I like it.
Definitely. And that's one of the most beautiful things about the publishing industry is that these terms keep coming up and it does
Right?
allow
Yeah.
discussion and it does allow some reflection. And on the topic of reflection, we're now going to talk about, the author's identity and sort of like the struggle because this is another shout out to another previous guest, Eric Bowden, who, talked about all of his favorite authors that he grew up with and, how much they inspired his writing because we're always going to be inspired by our
Yes.
favorite authors in one way or another. But at the end of the day, as he said, we are showing our readers who we are. We're not trying to be like Brian Sanderson. We're not trying to be like Frank Herbert. We're not trying to be like Tolkien,
Mm-hmm.
George R. R. Martin, J.K. Rowling, C.S. Lewis, or any other author. We're trying to be us. And
Right.
that's not easy. We
No.
have this balancing act where we have our individuality and the respect to the source material. So, for you, Fernando, how have you been able to balance these internal scales with this book as well as the next book in the series?
So to give you an example, when I used to be in a heavy metal band, we kind of like stopped listening music for us to create new our own music. So
Mm,
for a while, I kind of like step away from reading books just so I can cook and sit down and write my own. So I kind of like probably like block everything out, and I just went for it. I just went with it, uh, because I was Spanish is my first language. First, I think in Spanish, and then I write it in English. So I think that kind of like made it. I felt that I was unique in that aspect. I mean that I wasn't uh, uh, getting close to any of those authors or any of their work. The way that I wrote the book, or the way that I continue to write, is I just try to be myself 100% every time, because that's what I want to share. I want to share
mm.
what I think, or the story, and hopefully people can engage and have fun with it and learn from it. I guess. I mean, we all want to learn everything every day. So yeah, so it is definitely in the back of my mind every second that you sit down the computer and you write something, and you're like, maybe this is maybe somebody said this before. I mean, that always kick in some point, that little voice that like, I'm like, oh my goodness. So now you have to sit down, do some research, and et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes I come up with names for characters, and to be 100%, I Google it, and it's a character from the Gathering, or what is called the card game, Magic the Gathering. I'm
Yes.
like, are you serious? I came out with that name, and it was already there. I'm like, oh my goodness. So that kind of stuff, yeah, always kicking, always kicking. But you have to keep true to yourself 100% every time. There's no other way.
That is that's the name of the game. That is ultimately the name of the game. Just trying to stay true to yourself, and especially in the publishing industry when there's
Right.
so many clicks, trends, tropes that everyone tries to showcase, but you kind of lose the book's integrity in the process, which then leads to a very powerful question, which I'm going to ask you, Fernando. So brace yourself. This is a very loaded question.
All
So
right.
I've been doing this show now for about almost 7 years. And
Nice.
thank you. And within 7 years, I've had the opportunity to meet so many authors, so many historians, so many incredible people. I think right now, looking at my channel, I'm at 200. Well, you will be uh, my 300th episode on my
Wow.
channel. So congratulations for that. That is a
Congratulations
huge
to you.
milestone. Thank you, Fernando. And looking back on the series, I think the authors playlist is about 100 and now I think 133 strong. And
Wow.
when I look at that, I realize that I've learned so much from so many incredible people. And
Hmm.
I realized that in this industry, there are two roads for us: to be an author and to be known as an author. One is dedicated to storytelling, the other is dedicated to marketing. And each path has its own set of trials and obstacles, of course, leading to the end
Yes.
goal, which is literacy acclaim. But I will say this, and a lot of my viewers and listeners know what I'm talking about, is that the second path is the most enticing for first time authors. And that unfortunately leads to a lot of unrealistic goals and expectations if they try to make this their sole source of income. It is not a good idea to do that because this is not a get rich quick money scheme. It takes
Right.
years to really build a brand, really build a presence in the publishing world, which leads to a very powerful and kind of hard truth to swallow, which is in this industry, there is no guarantee your book's going to be a overnight success, whether that is financial or cultural related. There are exceptions to that rule, of course. There are many authors in this industry whose first works did give them that status, and all the power to them. That's not an easy thing to do. But
Right.
generally speaking, we have highs and lows in the publishing industry. Some books get more popular than others, some books fall flat, some books only sell a few copies. And I've talked with a lot of authors on this show who have said that they have known friends who've gone into this industry for the wrong reasons, and within the first 3 weeks, their passion for writing is dead. They don't want to do it. And again, it goes back to the discussion that there is no guarantee in this industry. It's a 50-50, not even a 50-50, maybe even less than that. So, Fernando, I would like to hear your thoughts on this question that while in this industry, it is kind of like Russian roulette, whether or not it's going to
Right.
be a financial success or not. It shouldn't stop somebody if this is truly the industry they want to devote their time and energy into, and also that they are passionate about storytelling.
Right. So just to, like you said, leave keep my feet on the ground, right? Stay realistic. Um, During the research and everything about before writing the book, um, I knew. I mean, I'm a first timer. I wrote the novel, and I just my goal for this trilogy is to publish it.
Mhm.
Is you I want to share the story. Hopefully somebody can read it. Hopefully that somebody will say, "Oh my goodness, all right, this is pretty cool. I know it's a fantasy story, but there's something in it that can help me tomorrow to overcome whatever's coming." You know what I'm saying? So my goal for this trilogy is to get it published, get it out there. Hopefully, somebody will read it and find it inspiring, interesting, and they like it. At bottom line, right? But to yeah, that would be setting wrong expectations, and everything is about setting expectations, unrealistic and realistic expectation that you publish your first novel and then all of a sudden Netflix is gonna knock at your door to sign you a miniseries. No, that's not gonna happen. Doesn't happen like that.
Nope.
It is a major struggle. Self-publishing obviously is the marketing, and that's when the self-publishing authors should be very very careful with all these sharks that are out there trying to
Yes.
message you every day about marketing. I have a marketing plan, I have this and that. It could be tempting, but just hold on to yourself. Don't give in yet. Just make sure you do the proper research of who's contacting you, etc., etc. because I've been contacted by a bunch of people wanting to do omega marketing, like going out there, and
Hmm.
when you look, their profile picture is one of those photo stock. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So there's a lot of people that try to take advantage of the self-publishing people, authors, because of the bait of the expectations. So if you know your expectation is like, okay, I'm gonna publish, I'm gonna do the best I can with the marketing, the best I can with the promos in Amazon, etc. I'm 100% sure that I miss a few things here and there in terms of marketing, because it's a complex system, ever evolving. But you, as a self-publishing author, you have to just do the best you can until hopefully somebody will come in and help you out. And when the time comes, then hopefully you can expand the horizon and reaching more people. But in the meantime, just my goal is to get that story out. So it's basically being an author first and write the story. I want to write the story to share it. That's it.
Absolutely. And that, of course, during those periods, we get better as time goes on because grit transforms into talent. And it may be, your 15th or 20th book that really gets your name out there. I've met a few authors, one author in particular, Natalie Wright, shout out to her. Her book that we discussed on her interview episode was her seventh book. But I was under the impression it was her first book. And I was shocked and also very surprised by that. And during that time, when we grow our brands, and we talked about this, or I mentioned this earlier in the interview, is of course networking within the
Hmm.
independent community. And networking is a huge and vital tool for authors to use, whether you're indie, hybrid, or traditional.
Right.
And it's
Hmm.
that where I think social media really shines because you're able to connect with so many incredible authors. I mean, all the authors that I've had on my show, and not just authors, but also historians, history buff, fellow podcasters, and so forth, they've all come from Instagram. I can literally just scroll. If I see something, I was like, okay, I really like this person. I really like what they have, like their whole books. Like, I'm going to contact them because I think, this has some potential. And I also want to give, a platform to people to showcase the work because that's happened to me when I first started. And I want to reciprocate that. So, with that being said, Fernando, are there any people you'd like to give a personal shout out to who have helped you within this industry, whether it's, your cover artist who's done the artwork for your books, or your developmental editor who edited your book, your beta readers, or maybe some friends and family members?
Oh yeah, my family 100% for they have the patience, because luckily I have my own little room, my getaway room, so I can sit down, lock the doors, put some ambient music, and just go to town writing. Right. Um, yeah, definitely the beta readers. Sarah, she's a friend of mine. She was the first person that read the first version of the book when it was like super, after the developmental editor, before the developmental editor took it apart. She read the script. Um, yeah, definitely there's a lot of people. I got a niece that she took care of the marketing because she was studying marketing in college. So she's like,
Hmm.
okay, uncle, let me try it, and let me see what I can do to build your brand, just like you said. And that was something else that I wasn't aware of. Oh, you have to build your brand, you have to establish X, Y, and Z in order for you to start reaching more people out there, and go to all your socials and work on it. So yeah, there's people come and go that always add their little grain of sand to make it better. It's been
Absolutely.
a great experience. It's it's been an incredible experience, because it's the best thing that I have learned about writing is learning. That's the best part. I'm a huge learner. I always want to learn whatever I'm doing. I want to be really prepared and learn about it. And the best part of writing is like you have to continue learning. You can have to continue researching and make yourself better, just like in anything else. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, Fernando. And as we cap off this amazing late night interview, here is the final question. So, with everything you've learned thus far about the writer's journey, what is your word of wisdom to fellow writers and authors who want to jump into this industry?
Oof. I would say just do your research. Just prepare yourself the best you can. I mean, I took courses in Coursera and all the other places.
Hmm.
Um, just the better prepared you are, the better you can be in order to perform whatever you have to do. I mean, after so many years in the Navy, everything it was about training. So we were successful in our missions because of training. So that's how I kind of like approach this writing journey, is training, writing short stories, writing the mythology before I wrote the
Hmm.
story, uh, and reading and then writing and reading and writing. That way you can train yourself and you can find your own voice, which is the hardest part. For me, the hardest part was to find my own voice, like the way I want to present a setting and the way I want the characters to intertwine with the story. So once you have done your research, you prepare yourself, you do some train, that feel like get that confidence level to the roof. Just go to town, just write your story, write your piece, and share it to the world. That way we can read it. Can't wait.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
100%. Absolutely couldn't agree more. And with that, viewers and listeners, we conclude another amazing author interview, late night author interview, I might add, here on the channel. I want to give a huge thank you to Fernando for making his official debut here on the show. And Fernando, where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out and connect with you? And where can people buy the first copy of your book?
definitely. I have in Instagram, author FJ Sanchez underscore. That's my Instagram tag. Uh, the website fjsanchezauthor.com, and FJ Sanchez on Facebook as well. And the book is Rise of the Unbroken on Amazon. Um, yeah, you go, and you can have the ebook, or the you want a physical copy also. It's also available. Once you order it, you decide which version you want. Definitely. Thank you so much for your interview. It was pretty awesome. It was pretty
Thank
great.
you, Fernando. And hopefully, we can have you back on the show again to talk about book two. And if
That's
you want
gonna
to
be
stay up to
great.
date, awesome. And if you want to stay up to date with Fernando, make sure to follow all those links, which I'll provide down below in the description of this video, as well as the link to purchase the first book, Rise of the Unbroken. And as always, viewers and listeners, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more guests coming out later this month as well as later this week. And as always, this is the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill signing out. Wish you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world.
No.